"We paid $10 million for this table," Preston Wells said, dragging his silver chair backward so loudly the whole ballroom turned. "We are not sitting beside her." Maya Quinn froze, with one hand still resting on the back of the empty seat. Around her, champagne glasses hovered in manicured fingers. Diamond bracelets flashed under the chandeliers, and every rich heir at table 7 looked at her as if she had spilled mud across the marble floor. She had checked the card twice before walking over. Her name was there in elegant black ink, Maya Quinn. Yet the moment she arrived, the laughter began. Brooke Ashford leaned toward another girl and whispered loudly enough for Maya to hear. "Maybe the foundation is sponsoring emotional support guests now." Someone snickered. Someone raised a phone. Maya felt heat crawl up her neck, but she kept her chin lifted, because the little black queen pendant against her collarbone was suddenly warm, as if her dead mother's hand were pressing there, telling her not to run. The Astoria Grand Hotel had never looked like a place built for people like Maya. Everything inside it shimmered with money, gold-trimmed balconies, white orchids taller than children, waiters moving like shadows with trays of champagne, and women in gowns that probably cost more than her yearly rent in Queens. Maya had spent 3 nights altering her emerald dress by hand, stitching old satin into something that might pass for elegant if no one looked too closely. For once, she had let herself believe she belonged. The Rinaldi Foundation had sent her an invitation after her restoration portfolio won a design nomination. The email said she was expected at the VIP scholars table. But now, with 4 heirs staring like she was a stain, the invitation in her clutch felt useless. "There must be a mistake," Trent Caldwell said, his smile lazy and cruel. "This table is for heirs, not charity cases." Maya swallowed, forcing her voice not to shake. "My name is on the seating list." She opened her clutch and pulled out the printed confirmation, but Brooke tilted her head with false pity. "Sweetheart, anyone can print an email. That does not mean anyone wants to sit next to you." A few people laughed harder, and Maya heard the ugly rhythm of it spread outward like a stain. She had heard laughter like that before in high school hallways, in fitting rooms, at job interviews where eyes dropped to her body before anyone asked her name. But here, under 1,000 chandelier lights, it hurt differently. Here, the humiliation had witnesses in tuxedos. Preston tapped the table card with 2 fingers. "Look at her dress. Look at her shoes. You really think she belongs at a Rinaldi table?" Maya looked down at the shoes she had polished herself that morning, and for 1 second, shame almost bent her spine. Then Sienna Blackwell arrived like a rescue scene, written by someone cruel. She glided between the tables in a champagne-colored gown, blonde hair pinned perfectly, mouth curved into the kind of smile cameras loved. Everyone at table 7 relaxed, as if the rightful queen of the room had returned. "What's happening here?" Sienna asked, though her eyes already glittered with satisfaction. Preston lifted one shoulder. Someone wandered into the wrong section. Sienna turned to Maya with a face full of practiced concern. "Oh, Maya, I was afraid this might happen." She reached to the table and picked up a place card Maya had not noticed before. The words on it punched the air from her lungs. Maya Quinn, staff guest. Sienna held it up gently, as if protecting Maya from embarrassment while sharpening the knife. "The staff tables are near the rear entrance. I'm sure no one meant for you to be confused." For a moment, Maya could not speak. The place card blurred in her vision. "That isn't right," she whispered. "I was invited as a nominee." Sienna's expression softened in a way that made Maya feel even smaller. Of course, a lot of people misunderstand Foundation language. It can be very exciting to receive an email from a wealthy organization. She placed a cool hand on Maya's arm, and Maya flinched at the touch. "But you must understand, this is a private donor table. These families have supported the Rinaldis for generations." Brooke covered her mouth, pretending not to smile. Trent leaned back and murmured. Maybe she thought the buffet came with a prince. Maya's fingers tightened around the Black Queen pendant until the metal bit into her skin. Sienna noticed it and gave the pendant a tiny glance. "That's charming," she said. "Did you get it from a thrift store?" The first security guard came before Maya could answer. He was tall, broad-shouldered, uncomfortable in the way decent men looked when rich people asked them to do ugly things politely. "Miss," he said, avoiding her eyes, "we need you to step away from the VIP area." The ballroom seemed to lean closer. Phones rose higher. Maya saw herself reflected in a dozen screens, round face flushed, body stiff with embarrassment. Old dress catching the light wrong. Hand clutched around a cheap-looking pendant no one knew had been her mother's last gift. "Please check the guest list," she said. "My confirmation number is right here." Preston laughed. "She has a confirmation number. How adorable." Sienna lowered her voice. "But not enough." "Maya? Don't make this worse. There are photographers here. A public scene will follow you forever." The guard reached gently for her elbow. That was when something inside Maya cracked. Not loudly, but deeply. She pulled her arm back before he could touch her. "I didn't sneak in," she said, louder now, though her voice trembled. "I was invited." The words hung there, fragile and almost ridiculous against the weight of their money. Sienna's smile faded just enough to reveal annoyance underneath. "Then, show some grace and go where you were assigned." Maya looked at the card again, at the lie printed in ink, and realized with sudden clarity that this was not a mistake. Someone had wanted this exact moment. Someone had wanted her standing in the brightest part of the ballroom, while heirs laughed and strangers recorded. Her mother used to tell her, "When they make a room too small for you, don't shrink. Remember who you are, even if you are the only one who knows." But Maya did not know who she was in that moment. She only knew everyone was waiting for her to break. The ballroom doors opened with a silence sharper than any announcement. It moved through the room before the man did. Conversations died first, near the entrance, then across the dance floor. Then finally, at table 7, Matteo Rinaldi stepped inside wearing a black tuxedo without a flower, without a smile, without the need to hurry. He did not look like a celebrity CEO in magazine spreads. He looked like a verdict walking across marble. Men twice his age straightened. Women lowered their glasses. Even Preston stopped laughing. Maya had seen his photo online when she researched the foundation. Matteo Rinaldi, heir to Rinaldi Holdings, shipping magnate, hotel owner, rumored prince of a family, people mentioned carefully after midnight. He crossed the ballroom with 2 men behind him and stopped only when his gaze landed on Maya's hand. Not her dress, not her body, not her tears. Hair pendant. His expression changed so quickly. Maya almost missed it. The coldness in his face did not soften. It sharpened into recognition. Matteo looked from the Black Queen pendant to the false staff card in Sienna's hand, then to the chair. Preston had shoved away as if Maya carried a disease. "Who refused her seat?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but the whole ballroom heard it. No one answered. Preston's face drained of color. Brooke lowered her phone. Sienna recovered first, stepping forward with a bright, brittle smile. "Matteo." There was just a seating confusion. I was handling it. He did not look at her. I did not ask who performed. His eyes moved across the table. I asked who refused her seat. The silence became unbearable. "Trent Model. We didn't know she was with you." Matteo finally turned his head. "She is not with me, because you approve of her." Maya wanted to disappear, but Matteo stepped to the chair and pulled it back into place with deliberate calm. The sound of its legs against marble echoed louder than Preston's cruelty had. "Miss Quinn," he said, and the way he knew her name sent a shock through her. "Sit." Maya did not move. She did not trust him. Men like Matteo Rinaldi did not rescue girls like her without a reason hidden somewhere in the shadows. Sienna's smile had vanished now, replaced by something pale and watchful. "Matteo," she said softly, "you're making people uncomfortable." He glanced at the heirs around the table. "Good." Then he removed a signet ring from his right hand, black stone, satin silver, and placed it beside Maya's plate. The symbol carved into it matched the pendant at her throat, a queen chess piece crowned in thorns. A murmur broke across the ballroom. It started as confusion, then became something close to fear. An older man near the donor table stood so abruptly his napkin fell. One of Matteo's guards lowered his head, as if witnessing a ceremony. Sienna stared at the ring, as though it had turned into a weapon. Maya could not breathe. "What is that?" she whispered. Matteo's eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was something human beneath the controlled darkness, disbelief, grief, and a recognition too old to belong to two strangers. "A debt," he said quietly, then turned to the room. "If the heirs refuse to sit beside her, then they are unworthy of this table." He moved the ring closer to Maya, claiming the place for her in a language everyone seemed to understand except her. "I will sit beside my queen." The words struck the room like shattered glass. Cameras flashed. Brooke's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Preston looked at Maya as if she had transformed in front of him. Not because she had changed, but because his understanding of power had. Sienna's hand tightened around the fake staff card until it bent. Maya stared at Matteo, then at the ring, then at the pendant her mother had pressed into her palm on the last night she was alive. For years, Maya had thought it was only a memory, a cheap black charm from a woman who died with too many secrets and not enough time to explain them. Now, every powerful person in the ballroom looked at it like it could burn down empires. Matteo pulled out the chair and waited. Maya's knees trembled, but she sat, and when she did, the heirs who had refused to sit beside her remained standing. Suddenly homeless at the most expensive table in New York. By midnight, Maya Quinn had become the most hated girl in Manhattan. She learned it not from a reporter, not from Matteo Rinaldi, and not from any official statement, but from the cracked phone buzzing non-stop in her hand while she sat alone on the back steps of the Astoria Grand Hotel Someone had posted the video, not the whole scene. Of course, not Preston shoving his chair away. Not Sienna holding the fake staff card. Not the security guard reaching for Maya's arm. The clip began only when Matteo placed his ring beside her plate and called her his queen. The caption read, "Unknown plus-size girl manipulates mafia heir at charity gala." Below it, strangers tore her apart with the easy cruelty of people who would never have to look into her eyes. She knew exactly where to stand. Golddigger. Imagine embarrassing yourself for a rich man. Maya stared until the words blurred, then turned the phone face down on the cold stone. Inside the hotel, the gala continued as if her humiliation had only made the evening more entertaining. Music floated through the service doors, soft and expensive. While Maya tried to steady her breathing, Matteo had offered to have his driver take her home. But the moment he said it, every instinct in her body pulled back. Men like him did not move through rooms by accident. They did not recognize strange pendants by coincidence. And they did not call unknown girls queen unless the word belonged to some game she did not understand. "I can get home myself," she had told him, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles ached. Matteo had studied her face for a long second, then said, "That is not what I asked." She hated that her heart moved at the concern in his voice. She hated even more that she could not tell if it was concern or control. When Maya finally reached her apartment in Queens, her roommate, Danny, was waiting by the kitchen counter, still wearing her diner uniform, eyes wide with worry and fear. "Maya, what happened?" "My cousin sent me a video, and people are saying you crashed some mafia fundraiser." Maya dropped her heels near the door and pressed one hand over her pendant. "I didn't crash anything. They changed my name card. They made me look like staff." Danny's face softened for only a second before fear returned. "There are men downstairs." Maya went still. "What men?" Danny pointed toward the window. A black SUV sat across the street under the weak yellow streetlight. It was not hiding. It was waiting. Maya's stomach twisted. She did not know whether those men belonged to Matteo, Sienna, or someone worse. Danny whispered, "I'm sorry, but my landlord already called. He saw the video. He said he doesn't want trouble in the building." The next morning, a trouble arrived faster than sunlight. Maya went to the bridal alteration shop where she worked 6 days a week, hoping the familiar smell of steam, tulas, and sewing chalk would make the world feel normal again. Mrs. Alvarez, the owner, met her before she could hang up her coat. The older woman's eyes were red, and it frightened Maya more than anger would have. "I got a call from Blackwell Events," Mrs. Alvarez said, lowering her voice, even though they were alone among half-finished wedding gowns. They said, "Our vendor contract will be reviewed if I keep you on schedule." Maya felt the room tilt. "Mrs. Alvarez, I didn't do anything." The woman reached for her hand. "I know you. Mia. I know. But that contract pays 3 months of rent for this shop." The words were kind, but the result was brutal. Maya took off her apron, folded it carefully, and left it beside the sewing machine where she had once believed talent could save her. By noon, the story had grown teeth. A gossip account posted a photo of Maya from 2 years earlier, cropped from a college fashion showcase, with the headline, "Rinaldi's new queen sources say she has a history of stealing designs." Maya stared at it from a bus seat, while strangers around her watched the same clip without knowing she was 2 feet away. She wanted to scream that the stolen design had been hers, that a professor's favorite student had copied her sketches and blamed her first. But the internet never wanted the wound beneath the rumor. It wanted a villain, easy to laugh at. When an older woman on the bus looked from her screen to Maya's face, then quickly away, Maya pulled the hood of her coat over her head. She had survived being ignored her whole life. Being seen like this was worse. It was like the world had finally noticed her, only to decide she should be ashamed of existing. Sienna Blackwell gave her statement that afternoon, beneath the marble arch of the Blackwell Museum, wearing soft pink and an expression of wounded elegance. Maya watched it on her phone from the corner of a laundromat, to her bag of clothes at her feet, because Danny had begged her to stay somewhere else, just until things calmed down. Sienna's voice trembled beautifully for the cameras. I truly feel sorry for Miss Quinn. Sometimes people from difficult backgrounds misunderstand kindness as opportunity. I only hope she receives help before this situation harms anyone else. She did not accuse Maya directly. She did something smarter. She pitied her. She turned Maya into a desperate girl whose pain made her dangerous. The comments shifted instantly. People praised Sienna for her grace. They called Maya unstable, jealous, obsessed. Maya locked her phone and sat very still between humming dryers. Because if she moved, she feared she might shatter. Mateo found her there an hour later. Not his guards. Not a driver. Him. He entered the laundromat in a black coat that looked absurd among plastic baskets and flickering fluorescent lights. But he did not seem embarrassed to be there. The other customers stared, then pretended not to. Maya stood so quickly. Her knee hit the metal chair. Did you have me followed? She asked. Mateo looked at the trash bag holding her clothes. Then, at the exhaustion under her eyes. Yes. The honesty startled her more than a lie would have. That is not comforting. He stepped closer, but not too close. Comforting you was not my first priority. Keeping you alive was. Maya gave a short, bitter laugh. Alive, I lost my job, my home, and my name in less than 24 hours because you called me a word I don't understand. Mateo's jaw tightened. You were already marked before I walked into that ballroom. The anger drained from Maya slowly, replaced by cold unease. Marked by whom Mateo glanced toward the laundromat window, where rain had begun to bead against the glass. Blackwell does not humiliate people for sport. They do it to erase them. Maya's fingers moved to her pendant. Why did you look at this, like you knew it, for the first time? Mateo seemed less like a prince, and more like a man standing at the edge of a locked room in his own memory. Because my mother drew that symbol before she died. Maya forgot to breathe. The dryers kept turning behind them, thumping softly like distant drums. That's impossible, she whispered. This belonged to my mother. Mateo's eyes sharpened. What was her name? Maya almost did not answer. Something in her resisted, handing him even one more piece of herself. But the pendant was warm again against her skin. Elena Quinn, she said. Mateo went perfectly still. Before he could explain, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She looked down and saw a photo attachment. First, the original seating chart from the gala, stamped with the Rinaldi Foundation seal. Her name was not listed as staff. It was printed clearly, at Table 7 Maya, Quinn Rinaldi's scholar nominee. Beneath the image was a short message. Sienna changed it before the doors opened. I saw her. I should have stopped it. Do not trust her. And do not trust Matteo too quickly. Maya's pulse hammered as another message appeared. This one. Without a name, but with a memory attached to it like a ghost. Your mother saved me once. I owe you the truth. Across the laundromat, Matteo watched her face change. Who sent that, he asked. Maya closed her fist around the phone, no longer sure whether he was her protector, her danger, or the beginning of a truth that had been waiting for her since the night her mother died. The message stayed on Maya's phone like a door she was afraid to open. Your mother saved me once. I owe you the truth. She read it 3 times in the laundromat, while Matteo stood across from her, silent and watchful, as if he understood that one wrong word would send her running into the rain. Who sent that, he asked again. Softer this time. Maya looked at the seating chart. Then, at his face. Someone who says Sienna changed my place card. Matteo's expression did not show surprise. That made her angrier than if he had denied it. You knew, she demanded. I suspected. She laughed once. Sharp enough to hurt. My life is being torn apart because rich people suspected things and stayed quiet. Matteo accepted the blow without flinching. Then stop trusting quiet people, he said. Start following evidence. Maya wanted to hate how calm he sounded. But the word evidence hooked into her fear. Evidence was something stronger than pity. Evidence could survive laughter. The unknown sender refused to give a name, but sent one more address, Belladonna Repairs. 14th Street. Queens. Escomisto. Val. Come before closing. Maya almost deleted it. The address sounded like a trap. And lately every open door had teeth. But Matteo saw it before she turned the screen away. That shop used to handle estate jewelry for old families. He said, my family stopped using them after my mother died. Maya narrowed her eyes. Convenient. Dangerous. He corrected. There is a difference. She grabbed her trash bag of clothes, shoved the phone into her coat pocket, and walked toward the door. Matteo followed. I'm going alone, she said. No, you're not. She turned on him in the rain, hair sticking to her cheeks, humiliation and exhaustion burning through her. You don't get to command me because you called me queen in a room full of people. Matteo's gaze dropped to the pendant at her throat. No, he said. I get to worry because every person who recognizes that symbol ends up dead or hunted. Belladonna Repairs looked abandoned from the street. Its sign hung crooked over a narrow storefront, squeezed between a closed bakery and a check-cashing place. The windows cloudy with dust and old velvet displays. Inside, the air smelled of metal polish, cedar drawers, and secrets left too long in the dark. An old man behind the counter looked up when the bell rang. He had silver hair, thick glasses, and hands that trembled until his eyes landed on Maya's pendant. Then the trembling stopped. His face went so pale, Maya thought he might faint. Where did you get that? He whispered. Maya stepped back instinctively. Matteo moved half an inch closer, not touching her, but making himself a wall. It belonged to my mother, Maya said. Elena Quinn. Mister. Vale closed his eyes, and something like grief crossed his face. Elena. He breathed. God, Forgive us. We all thought the child had disappeared." The word child struck Maya harder than she expected. What child, Mr. Vale locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and led them into a back room crowded with safes and broken clocks. "You," he said. "She brought you here once. You were maybe 4 years old, asleep against her shoulder. She said if anything happened, the Queen must stay hidden." Maya's hand rose slowly to the pendant. "This is just a necklace, Mr. Vale shook his head. "No, Miss Quinn. That is the Black Queen seal." Matteo's expression darkened, but he said nothing. "Mr. Vale took a jeweler's lens from the table and examined the pendant without touching it. Your mother was not only a seamstress, she was a restoration expert for families who wanted their scandals stitched shut. Dress, jewels, ledgers, hidden linings, secret compartments. Elena saw everything, because powerful people never noticed the woman fixing what they ruined." Maya sat down because her knees had begun to shake. All her life, her mother had been reduced to gentle fragments, a warm hand smoothing her hair, a needle flashing under lamplight, a tired smile at midnight, blood on the steering wheel after the accident no one wanted to discuss. She died in a car crash, Maya said, though the words suddenly sounded rehearsed by someone else. Mr. Vale's mouth tightened. "That is what Blackwell paid people to say." Matteo's eyes hardened. "Careful." The old man looked at him without fear. "I have been careful for 18 years. Mr. Rinaldi. It made me a coward." He opened a drawer and removed a faded photograph. In it, Eleanor Quinn stood beside a dark-haired woman Maya did not recognize. Both of them younger, both afraid, both holding the same Black Queen symbol between them. Matteo inhaled sharply. "My mother," he said. His voice was nearly gone. Maya looked from the photograph to him, and for the first time, their pain stood in the same room. "Mr. Vale explained slowly, as if every sentence had to be pulled from a grave. Years ago, Matteo's mother, Valentina Rinaldi, discovered that Blackwell money was moving through charity auctions into offshore accounts tied to betrayals inside the Rinaldi network. Elena had been hired to restore a set of antique gowns for the Blackwell women, but she found documents sewn into the linings, then made copies before returning them. Valentina and Elena planned to expose the scheme together. Before they could, Valentina died in what was called a private boating accident, and Elena fled with the proof. She hid the ledger, where only the Queen could open it. "Mr. Vale said." Maya stared at him. "Stop calling me that." He lowered his head. "I am sorry, but in the old Rinaldi code, the Queen's seat was not a wife's chair. It was a position of debt and protection. Your mother earned it when she saved Valentina's son from being taken." Matteo looked like the floor had shifted beneath him. "Taka, Mr. Vale's eyes moved to him. "You were 9. Blackwell men intercepted your car after a school event. Elena saw the exchange happen behind the hotel service entrance. She cut the alarm wires in reverse, trapped the men inside the garage, and carried the evidence to your mother. The official story became a security misunderstanding. Valentina never forgot. Maya remembered her mother's scar then. A white slash across her palm, she once said, came from broken glass. She had kissed it as a child. She had never known she was kissing proof of courage. Matteo turned away. One hand braced against a safe. The Prince of Manhattan looked suddenly like a boy, learning he had been alive because a poor seamstress had been brave enough to bleed. My mother wrote, "Find the girl with the Black Queen," he said. She meant Elena's daughter. Before Mr. Vale could answer, the shop phone rang. The sound sliced through the room. No one moved. It rang again, then stopped. A second later, Maya's phone buzzed. An invitation appeared from Sienna Blackwell's verified number. Polished and poisonous Maya. I owe you an apology. Come to the Blackwell Winter Auction tomorrow night. Let me correct what happened publicly. Come alone. If you want people to believe you are not being controlled by Mateo. Maya stared at the message. And a colder one followed refuse. And everyone will know you were never brave enough to face the truth. Mateo read it over her shoulder and said, "No." Maya looked up. "You don't decide that it's a trap." "Of course it is." Her voice trembled. "But not from fear alone. But if I hide, she keeps the story. She keeps my name. She keeps my mother's truth buried under jokes about my body and lies about my hunger." The Blackwell Winter Auction took place the next evening, beneath a glass ceiling dusted with artificial snow. Maya arrived in the same emerald dress. Not because she had nothing else, but because she refused to let them make it a costume of shame. Mateo did not enter with her, though she knew his men were somewhere nearby. Sienna greeted her at the entrance with tears already shining in her eyes for the cameras. "Maya," she said, embracing her before Maya could step back. "Thank you for coming. I want everyone to see there is no hatred between us." Her perfume was soft, expensive, suffocating. "You don't want peace," Maya whispered near her ear. Sienna's smile stayed perfect. "No. Sweetheart, I want witnesses." She stepped back and guided Maya toward the center of the room, where the donors, heirs, and reporters all turned. For one fragile second, Maya thought she might be allowed to speak. Then Sienna touched her own bare throat and screamed. The room erupted. "My necklace," Sienna cried, clutching at her collarbone. "My grandmother's diamond necklace is gone." Security moved instantly. Too instantly. As if they had been waiting for that exact note in the performance. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "No," she said, backing away. Sienna looked at her with tears sliding down her cheeks. But her eyes were dry inside. "Maya, please, tell me you didn't." The guards surrounded Maya before she could reach the exit. One of them opened her clutch. The diamond necklace spilled onto the white marble floor in a glittering coil. Gasps rose like flames. Phones lifted again. Reporters surged forward. Sienna covered her mouth, playing heartbreak so beautifully, the room believed before Maya breathed. "I tried to help you," Sienna whispered. "Why would you do this to me?" Maya stared at the necklace, then at the cameras, and understood the trap had closed exactly where Sienna wanted it in public. Under lights. With the world ready to call the chubby girl greedy again. For 1 second, Maya heard nothing. The auction hall moved around her in a blur of open mouths, white tablecloths, glidanjols, and raised phones. But the sound vanished, as if the world had been dropped underwater. The diamond necklace lay on the marble between her shoes, bright and damning. Exactly where Sienna wanted everyone to look. A security guard gripped Maya's wrist. Another reached for her purse again, performing outrage for cameras that were already broadcasting her disgrace. I didn't take it, Maya said, but her voice sounded small beneath the swelling whispers. Sienna stood 10 feet away, one hand pressed to her bare throat, tears sparkling under the lights. Maya, please don't make this worse, she said, her voice trembling with perfect sorrow. I tried to protect you after the gala. I told people you were misunderstood. Maya looked into Sienna's eyes and finally saw the truth clearly. Sienna was not afraid of being caught. She was thrilled to be believed. Then the main doors closed. Not slammed. Not dramatically, but with a final, controlled sound that silenced the room more effectively than any shout could have. Matteo Rinaldi stepped from the entrance with 3 men behind him, and an expression so cold, even the reporters lowered their cameras for a breath. No one leaves, he said. The guards holding Maya's wrist immediately let go. But Matteo's eyes never moved from Sienna. This is a private charity event. Sienna's father, Harrison Blackwell, snapped from the donor table. He was silver-haired, elegant, and furious in the way powerful men became when they sensed power leaving their hands. You have no authority to lock my guests inside. Matteo walked toward the necklace, stopped beside Maya, and looked down at the diamonds. You brought my foundation nominee here, accused her before cameras, and planted Blackwell property in her purse. His gaze lifted. That makes this my business. Sienna gave a broken little laugh, the kind designed to sound wounded. Planted Matteo. I know you feel responsible for her after that strange scene at the gala, but she was caught with my necklace. Maya expected Matteo to answer with anger. Instead, he crouched and studied the necklace without touching it. His silence unsettled Sienna for the first time. Maya saw it, a small twitch near her mouth, a flicker of calculation in her eyes. Matteo looked at Maya. Have you seen this before? Maya swallowed. The diamonds were arranged in a crescent pattern, but the clasp caught her attention. It was delicate, oiled, and strangely familiar, with a tiny imperfection beneath the hinge. Her mother had taught her to notice repairs by their scars. The clasp was rebuilt, she said slowly, by hand. Not recently. Sienna's face hardened. How convenient. Now she's an expert. Maya ignored her and knelt beside Matteo. There's a hidden stitch mark in the velvet backing. My mother used to do that when she reinforced antique pieces. The words changed the air. Matteo turned his head sharply. Harrison Blackwell pushed away from his table. Enough of this circus. Call the police and remove her. But Matteo had already taken a folded silk cloth from one of his men and lifted the necklace carefully. Gladly, he said. But first, we verify evidence. Sienna stepped forward too quickly. That necklace is mine. You can't just take it. Matteo looked at her hand, reaching for the diamonds. And she stopped, as if she had touched fire. If it is yours, you should want the truth. Maya watched the confidence in Sienna's face begin to fracture. It was not fear of losing a necklace. It was fear of what the necklace might still carry. Suddenly, Mr. Vale's words came back to Maya. Powerful people never noticed the woman fixing what they ruined. Her mother had touched this necklace. Her mother had left marks where arrogant eyes would never look. Matteo did not expose the evidence in the auction hall. He did something colder. He invited the police commissioner, the foundation board, the press, and Harrison Blackwell himself to the Blackwell Museum's media room, a glass-walled chamber overlooking the auction floor. Sienna protested that she was traumatized. Harrison threatened lawsuits. Brooke and Preston whispered frantically by the doorway, no longer laughing, because they understood the evening had become too serious for rich children to escape cleanly. Maya stood near the conference table with her hands clasped around the Black Queen pendant, fighting the old instinct to apologize for taking up space. Mateo's technician placed the necklace beneath a magnifying lamp. The room watched on a large screen as the clasp appeared magnified gold. Diamonds, scratches, and under the hinge, a microscopic engraved mark. E. Q. Maya's throat closed. Elena Quinn, her mother's initials, hidden where only someone who knew her work would think to search. Sienna recovered first. A repair mark proves nothing. Many jewelers sign their work. Mateo nodded once. Correct. He placed Maya's pendant beside the necklace. The Black Queen's seal caught the light, and the technician scanned both pieces. The screen split in two. Beneath the Queen, pendant's backplate was a tiny magnetic groove that matched a concealed release inside the necklace clasp. Harrison's face turned gray. This is absurd, he said. Mateo ignored him. The technician aligned the pendant and clasp. There was a soft click, almost too small to matter. Then the diamond clasp opened in a way no ordinary clasp should, revealing a thin black strip sealed inside the gold. Maya stared at it, unable to move. For 18 years, people had told her grief was all she had left of her mother. Now her mother's hand reached out from inside, a jewel used to destroy her. Sienna whispered, "That's not possible." The audio began with static. Then a woman's voice filled the room. Low, urgent, and shaking with fear. Maya knew that voice from lullabies, from bedtime stories, from the last voicemail she had played until the file corrupted. Elena Quinn was speaking. Valentina, if you hear this. Blackwell moved the money through the children's charity auction. Harrison knows. He signed the transfer himself. Maya covered her mouth as her knees weakened. But Mateo's hand steadied the back of her chair without claiming her. The recording shifted. A younger Harrison Blackwell spoke next, angry and close to the microphone. The seamstress has copies. Find them before Rinaldi does. Another voice answered. Smooth and female. Not Sienna's, but older. Perhaps her mother's. And the child, Harrison replied. Children grow up. Loose ends become witnesses. The room went still in horror. Maya felt the sentence enter her like a blade. She had not only been mocked, she had been hunted long before she knew there was a game. Sienna suddenly lunged for the device. But Mateo's guard caught her wrist. Her performance shattered. You don't understand what she is doing, she screamed. No longer sweet. No longer wounded. She came here to ruin us. Look at her. Look at what she is. Do you really think someone like that belongs in our world? The words rang through the glass room and carried through the speakers, still connected to the auction hall below. Every guest heard them. Every reporter heard them. Every phone caught the mask falling from Sienna Blackwell's beautiful face. Maya turned toward her slowly. The old Maya would have flinched. The old Maya would have looked down, ashamed that someone had made her body part of the accusation. But something inside her had changed when Elena's voice filled the room. Someone like me? Maya asked, quietly. You mean someone, your family, could not starve? Shame. Orerase. Matteo placed a file on the table. There is more. He opened the Queen ledger. Recovered that afternoon from the safe Mr. Vale had kept hidden beneath Belladonna repairs. Bank transfers. Altered seating charts. Payments to the hotel staff member who changed Maya's card. Messages from Sienna instructing a PR firm to frame Maya as unstable and greedy. A signed document from Harrison authorizing hush money after Elena Quinn's death. Finally, Matteo slid one page forward. The original Rinaldi Foundation inheritance clause, signed by Valentina Rinaldi before her death. It named Elena Quinn as holder of the Queen's seat, with all rights transferring to her surviving child. The board members stared. The commissioner leaned closer. Sienna shook her head violently. No. No. That seat is ceremonial. Matteo's voice cut through her panic. It controls 31% of the Foundation's voting power. He looked at Maya, and the room followed his gaze. It belongs to Miss Quinn. For the first time that night, Maya stepped forward without being pushed. Too pulled. Defended. Or accused. Cameras watched from the doorway. Donors watched from behind glass. Rich heirs who had refused to sit beside her now stood pale and silent below. Maya placed her palm over the ledger, feeling the old paper beneath her fingers like a pulse. My mother was not a loose end, she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. She was not staff you could use and discard. She was not a poor woman who accidentally learned too much. She was the reason your secret survived this long without destroying innocent people. She looked at Sienna. And I am not the desperate girl you invented, because the truth terrified you. Sienna's face twisted with rage. But no one moved to comfort her now. The room had finally seen her clearly. And beauty, without a mask, looked uglier than cruelty had ever looked on Maya. Police officers entered before Harrison could reach the door. The commissioner spoke quietly, but the words carried obstruction, enfront, witness tampering, evidence, concealment. Harrison Blackwell tried to straighten his jacket as if dignity was still available to him, but his hands trembled when they placed him in cuffs. Sienna screamed his name, then turned to Matteo with tears returning too late. You can't let them do this to me. Our families were supposed to be joined. Matteo looked at her as though she had become part of the furniture. Your family tried to bury the woman who saved mine. Then he turned away from her and faced Maya. The entire auction hall watched through the glass. The Queen's seat is yours, he said. No one can take it unless you give it away. Maya looked down at the necklace, at the pandan, at the evidence her mother had hidden in plain sight. Then she lifted her eyes to the heirs below and understood the cruelest truth of all. They had never refused to sit beside a nobody. They had refused to recognize a queen before she had a crown. The next morning, New York woke up to the fall of the Blackwells. Every screen that had mocked Maya Quinn now replayed Sienna's screaming face, Harrison Blackwell's handcuffs, the hidden recording inside the necklace, and Matteo Rinaldi's quiet declaration that the Queen's seat belonged to the girl they had called a charity case. Maya did not watch any of it from a penthouse or a limousine. She watched from the kitchen table of Mrs. Alvarez's apartment, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, while the older woman made coffee with trembling hands and cried every time Elena Quinn's name appeared on the news. I should have protected you, Mrs. Alvarez whispered. Maya reached across the table and took her hand. "You were scared." Mrs. Alvarez shook her head. "That is not an excuse." Maya looked at the woman who had given her work when no one else would, and understood something painful. Apologies did not erase harm. But honest shame was different from performance. For once, no one asked Maya to comfort the people who had hurt her. By afternoon, the first visitors came. Preston Wells arrived with flowers worth more than Maya's rent. His face pale, his voice rehearsed. Brooke Ashford came behind him, eyes swollen from crying, after her family's name appeared in an article about donors who enabled Blackwell influence. Trent Caldwell sent a handwritten apology because he was too ashamed to face her, which Maya found almost funny, since shame had never stopped him from humiliating her in public. They stood in Mrs. Alvarez's narrow living room, surrounded by family photos and half-mended lace, looking absurdly expensive and strangely small. Preston cleared his throat. "Maya, we were wrong. We judged you before we knew who you were." Maya let the silence stretch until he shifted under it. "No," she said. "You judged me before you knew I had power. That's not the same thing." Brooke began to cry harder, but Maya did not soften. Their tears were not her responsibility anymore. Julian Crest came last. Alone, with no flowers and no excuse polished enough to insult her. He stood in the hallway, hands in his coat pockets, looking like a boy who had inherited too much money and too little courage. "I saw Sienna change your card," he said. "Before the gala started, I knew it was wrong, and I did nothing." Maya leaned against the doorframe, the Black Queen pendant resting against her sweater. "Why?" Julian's eyes dropped. "Because my father's company depended on Blackwell contracts. Because Sienna knew things about my family. Because I told myself he would only be embarrassed for a few minutes." His voice cracked. Then Mateo walked in, and I realized I had watched someone set a fire and called it a candle. Maya closed her eyes briefly. Not because she forgave him, but because the truth had weight. "You helped later," she said. "But later is not the same as when I was standing there alone." Julian nodded, accepting the sentence like a punishment he deserved. "I know." He reached into his coat and handed her a small envelope. Inside was a photograph of Elena Quinn holding Maya as a sleeping child, standing beside Julian when he was little, his arm in a sling. "She saved me, too," he said. "Not from kidnappers like Mateo, from my own father's men. During a custody fight, she hid me in her shop until my mother could get me safely out." Maya stared at her mother's face in the picture, younger and tired and brave, in a way that made grief rise fresh in her throat. Elena had spent her life saving children, rich families, treated like property, then died with the world believing she was only a poor seamstress who lost control of her car. Maya pressed the photo to her chest. "I don't forgive you yet," she told Julian. His eyes filled with tears. "I didn't come to ask for that." For the first time, Maya believed him. 3 weeks later, the Rinaldi Foundation Board gathered in a private conference room above Manhattan, where the windows looked down on the city, like the city belonged to anyone rich enough to stand above it. Maya entered wearing a navy dress she had made herself, with no attempt to hide the shape of her body. Mateo stood when she came in, but so did everyone else. The gesture should have pleased her. Instead, it reminded her how quickly rooms learned manners after power changed hands. The chairman read the inheritance clause aloud, confirming Elena Quinn's queen's seat had legally transferred to Maya. 31% voting power, full access to historical records, authority to freeze Blackwell-linked grants. Maya listened without blinking. When the documents were pushed toward her, Matteo placed a pen beside them, then stepped back. He did not tell her where to sign. He did not touch her shoulder. He simply waited. And that restraint mattered more than any speech he could have made. After the meeting, Matteo found Maya on the rooftop terrace, where winter wind moved through the city and turned her eyes bright with cold. "You could take the apartment," he said. "The car, the security detail, the entire settlement Blackwell will offer to keep parts of this quiet." Maya smiled faintly. "That sounds like a very expensive cage." He did not deny it. It could also be protection. She looked at him then. Really looked. At the man who had entered her life like a storm and somehow learned to stand still when she needed space. "I am tired of being protected in ways that make me smaller." Matteo's face tightened with something like shame. "Then tell me what protection looks like to you." Maya turned back toward the skyline. "A foundation in my mother's name. Scholarships for girls who get laughed out of rooms before anyone sees their talent. Legal help for women destroyed by rich families and prettier lies. And a rule that no donor gets a seat just because his grandfather bought one." Matteo was quiet for a long moment. "Done," he said. Maya laughed softly, but there were tears in it. "You can't just say, 'done.' I can begin with 'done' and earn the rest." That answer stayed with her. It was not romantic enough for a fairy tale, but it was honest enough for real life. Over the next months, Maya worked like a woman, building a house over a grave. She renamed the program Elena Quinn House and moved its offices into the same old building where Belladonna Repairs had stood. After Mr. Vale donated the space and admitted publicly that fear had kept him silent too long, Mrs. Alvarez became director of the design apprenticeship. Dani, who had once asked Maya to leave out of fear, returned with an apology and volunteered for the housing fund. Maya did not let everyone back into her life fully, but she learned that healing did not always mean locking every door. Sometimes it meant choosing which ones had earned a key. Sienna's downfall was not as glamorous as her rise. Without her father's protection, her friends disappeared first, then the brands, then the invitations, then the family lawyers, who advised her to accept a plea deal after investigators found payments, fake press briefings, and messages ordering staff to frame Maya as greedy, unstable, and desperate. At the sentencing hearing, Sienna wore a plain black dress and no diamonds. She turned once toward Maya, perhaps expecting pity, perhaps hoping beauty could still purchase mercy. "I only did what I had to do to survive," Sienna said before the judge. Maya stood when asked if she wanted to speak. Her voice did not shake this time. "No, you did what you did because survival was not enough for you. You needed worship. You needed a world where girls like me stayed grateful for crumbs, so girls like you could call yourselves generous." Sienna looked away first. That was the closest thing to victory Maya wanted from her. The new gala took place 1 year after the night that nearly broke her. Same hotel. Same chandeliers. Same marble floor. But table 7 was gone. In its place stood a long circular table at the center of the ballroom, carved from dark walnut and set with small black queen emblems at every seat. Above it, in simple gold letters, was a name, the Queen's Table. No one bought those seats. They were given to scholarship winners, whistleblowers, survivors, artists, seamstresses, nurses, clerks, and girls who had once been told they did not belong in beautiful rooms. Maya stood at the entrance in a deep emerald gown. The original dress remade with stronger seams and a fuller skirt. Not to look thinner, not to apologize, but to honor the night she had survived. When she entered, people rose. This time, the silence did not humiliate her. It welcomed her. Mrs. Alvarez cried openly. Mr. Vale bowed his head. Julian applauded from the back. Not trying to be noticed, Mateo waited beside the center chair, one hand resting lightly on its back. He looked different to Maya now. Not softer, exactly, but less armored. When she reached him, he pulled the chair out with a small smile. May I sit beside you? He asked. A year ago. He had called her queen before she understood the word. A year ago. She had needed someone powerful to stop the room from swallowing her whole. Now, she looked around at the faces watching her. Some ashamed, some proud, some young and hopeful, in a way that made her chest ache. She touched the Black Queen pendant, then looked back at Mateo. Only if you understand one thing, she said. I was never a queen, because you named me one. His eyes held hers, steady and unguarded. Maya sat at the table, built from everything they failed to take from her. I was a queen, the night I survived without a throne. And when Mateo sat beside her, he did not take her hand until she offered it.